So this is gonna be a lower body mobility workout inspired by a client of mine, Carlos, who had double bicep tendon surgery, tore both biceps, so he couldn't work his upper body at all. And so we had to come up with a way to get some good workouts in, and this is what came from it. So the first thing you're gonna do is we're gonna sit in this, essentially they call it a Seiza position. There's two versions of it. There's toes underneath, to where if you see, I'll turn around here. If you see right here, my toes are tucked like that. And then there's toes behind you, like this. We're gonna start with the toes underneath. I'll typically have most people hold it for about 60 seconds to begin with. I'm just gonna go by feel on this because I don't have a timer in front of me. When I first started doing this position, I was not mobile enough to actually sit on my heels. And so using something like a pillow or a foam roller to sit onto is really helpful. These are just here for support, no other reason. But you really wanna like sit the weight of your hips onto the object underneath you or onto your hips so you can get a big stretch. This is a huge toe stretch. It's super intense for a lot of people. My knees couldn't handle this after my double knee surgery, so I had to start too with this puppy right here on top. But as you get better at it, you can just sit and try to get your butt as close to your heels as possible. Like my butt doesn't touch my heels on this one. But now I'm gonna turn my toes back towards the wall behind me. This one stretches out like the front of the ankle really well. And this one, we're gonna try to get the butt to the heels on. And so this is a pretty big stretch for a lot of people. Some people can just sit in this position really well. This is like a classic, this is like a classic jiu-jitsu or martial art position. Or if your kid is just on the ground, you wanna be able to sit in this position. I couldn't do this for about 23 years of my life, sit here. And so I'll kind of bounce around a little bit. I'll just sit, try to get really tall posture. Holding this for about 30 to 60 seconds on each side. You can even too, this isn't a part of the routine, but you can go one side at a time, put one leg in front and really sit back on one leg. And you can do this with the toes tucked or the toes pointed behind you, or really sit back into it. Like my right side's cake, I can really sit into that, but my left side's one with the torn meniscus on it, and so it's a little stiffer than the right one, even though they both had surgery. Next is gonna be a hamstring stretch. So for this one, you're gonna go leg out in front in this half kneeling position. Real big key here is to not let your knee bend. So flex the quad, and these toes are gonna wanna point away. Point your toes back towards you. And if you do this right, you can do it two ways. You can do it, we're gonna go 10 reps here, reaching and not really caring about what's going on in your spine, and you'll get a great stretch here. 3. But what's really even more helpful is to try to keep your spine perfectly straight and this back hip from pointing out to the side. So we rotate right now my left butt cheek forward here, and it's really intense in the hamstring on this one. If you keep the spine straight and that hip locked in, this is all the range of motion you need to have a huge burn in there. So this is a more true hamstring stretch with that straight spine and the hips rotated forward rather than out. Because if you're here, see how much more I can get in this, whereas if I'm here, straight spine, locked in, it's not gonna work. So 10 reps each side there. Back foot's toes are tucked underneath to support you. Same thing here. Oh my gosh, this should almost feel like you're hinging, like a deadlift. Oh, you'll feel this in the calf too. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. All right, so that is magic in and of itself. What I like to do after this, I'm gonna check, just see if the microphone's good. We're about to die. Yeah, we're still doing good. Awesome. So on this one, I'll get my butt up against the wall, but if you don't have a wall, it's fine. Widen out into a straddle here. 10 reps. My feet are a little bit forward of the wall so my butt can push back into it. And I'm just coming down just like that for 10, right? Big stretch, keep my legs straight. The goal on this one eventually is to get head to the ground. You have to get pretty wide to make that happen, or just have, I think, short legs probably. So, yep, head to ground. 4, don't worry if you're not at that level. 5, I kind of like to just stay at the bottom too. 6, 7, 8, 9. You can have your hands on the ground too if you need it. And 10. Toes are slightly pointed out on this one. If you come up, I like to kind of bend one leg at a time and just bring them in. So that right there is a lot. You could just end it there for a good lower body mobility session. But we're gonna get into the hips a little bit here now. So on this one, I'm gonna get you into it. So this is the exact point where my mic does indeed fail, but I'll walk you through this. We're gonna be in this 90-90 position here. A lot of people will make a mistake to where they'll try to go towards their foot like you see me doing here. Instead, we wanna lean more into the knee here, going down and getting a big stretch in the butt cheeks. You might also feel it pulling in the hip flexor on the back leg, but mainly it's gonna be that piriformis. These are codenamed piriformis push-ups in different programs, but I just call them the 90-90 push-ups when I'm working with people in person. Big thing here is gonna be to make sure that both legs are in that 90-degree angle. You know, you might want to open up the angle or close up the angle depending on the tightness that you have, but this should be your baseline. I tend to want to stay in the bottom range of the movement because that's where I feel the pull a little bit more. I don't really straighten my arms too much coming all the way up, except for, demonstration and showing you guys. I like to stay more in the bottom range. And again, right here, I'm making sure that I'm nice and straight going down more towards that mid shin to knee line with my head. And that's going to be where I like to get the best stretch throughout this entire position. If you've got creaky hips, this one is going to be amazing. I love this one. And it just, there's really nothing quite like it that opens everything up in those hips. To get that external rotation here is just priceless. And you'll see in a little bit, we'll do some internal rotation here to add in another play. So this is something I like to pull out of the bag whenever I'm working with somebody on hip mobility because everyone is terrible at it. You're going to see here, we're going to do some hip internal rotation. What I'm going to ask you to do is to lift that back leg in this 90-90 position. You want to try to keep it all in the hip here. And if it's too difficult, what you can do is add a pad underneath that back knee to add a little bit more leverage. And if you lean forward like you see me doing right there, that'll also make it easier. So see, lean forward here with the pad, much easier than if you're upright without the pad, it's going to be a lot harder. So start with wherever you can start. Go ahead and do 10 repetitions of this, trying to hold it for a second or so at the top. See, now I'm more upright. It's difficult. We're going to switch sides here though. This internal rotation, don't be surprised if when you start, you have absolutely zero internal rotation and you're not able to actually get your foot up at all. This is probably the case with about 50 to 70% of my clients when we first do this drill. The important part is that you're just activating those muscles in the butt cheeks and hip flexor area to lift the leg up. If you have a buddy there, they can physically lift it for you too to be able to get a good stretch out of that. So 10 reps there. Great lower body activation for everything. As we go through this, we can also come into the 90-90 again and do these hip flips or these switches. These are really good. The more leaned back you are, the easier. And the more upright you are, like you see me doing here. Oh man, my hips are creaking and aching. I'm screaming. Look at my face. Oh, it hurts so bad. Man, those are terrible. So 10 reps of those is a great way to also add in some extra spice to this lower body mobility routine. And then this final one is a hip anterior and posterior pelvic tilt. So it looks kind of weird. It looks like you're basically twerking in this position here, but you can see it's a very small movement, but I'm posterior tilting, kind of sucking my tailbone up towards my belly button, and then I'm anterior tilting to where I'm almost trying to like open up the space in between my crotch and hips to the floor. So it's very, very small. Imagine you're kind of like rocking your hips back and forth. It's super hard to see on video. And for a lot of people, if you don't know what an anterior or posterior pelvic tilt is, you might just want to skip this one. But if you do know, do 10 reps of each in the 90-90, and you will feel your hip flexors just cramping and lighting up. And it's kind of like you're just knocking off a lot of dust right here. So really small anterior, posterior pelvic tilts, oscillating between the two. grinding away at those hips and getting everything opened up to feel nice and loosey-goosey. So that is this 10-minute lower body mobility routine. Enjoy, guys. Try it out and let me know how it feels.